Meet Dowan, an 18-year-old gaming minion whose desk looks like a mobile phone store caught fire. Surrounded by an absolute mountain of power banks and multiple glowing screens, our stressed protagonist frantically multitasks to play games for other people. Classmates drop by just to mock his ridiculous setup and call him a hardcore gaming otaku. Then Chuerin casually approaches his desk while playing something called Life Game and complains about being stuck at the bottom of the rankings. Smitten and easily distracted, Dowan immediately offers to play the game for her instead. She happily hands over her phone before rushing off to lunch with a friend, leaving our love-struck gamer completely baffled. Chuerin pops back in to thank Dowan just as a system notification shockingly announces that his character has died. Before he can even process the disaster, an aggressive silver-haired bully named Min Chol-vu slams Dowan face first into his desk for getting distracted. Min Chol-vu casually complains about his struggling guild and lost AP and demands that Dowan acquire the legendary Fire King sword within a week. As usual, the strong push around anyone weaker just to climb the school's social ranking, treating regular students like disposable mobs in a twisted game. Dowan finds himself battered and bruised on the floor, listening to impossible demands while wondering just how he is going to pull off this insane gaming favor. Dowan sits in his room wearing cat headphones and smiling as he plays Lost RPB on his computer, boasting that the game became too easy once he hit maximum level. He starts grinding to get the Fire King sword for Min Chol-vu, but suddenly a system notification flashes across his monitor, announcing that his level 100 character, Jet Black Chocopi, has just been killed by the Fire King Magmaros. Staring in absolute panic with sweat pouring down his face, he realizes he is in deep trouble and needs to fix this immediately. Hours tick by as energy drink cans pile up on his desk while he tirelessly battles the boss again and again. Frustration sets in as he angrily grabs his monitor, screaming that the game developers apparently lowered the item drop rate while raising the difficulty. 64 hours roll by as energy drink cans and instant noodle cups pile high around the computer desk. Dowan buries his face in his hands in absolute despair, wondering why the rare drop refuses to appear after so much grinding. Flashbacks hit hard as he remembers Min Chol-vu brutally beating him up while Chuerin watches in sheer horror, filling him with burning rage and tears of frustration. He glares at the screen as massive damage numbers explode across the monitor during another intense battle against the Fire King Magmaros. Suddenly, a high-level player known as World-Ending Apocalypse drops into the arena and obliterates the boss in a single hit. The overpowered newcomer approaches his low-level avatar, Jet Black Chocopi, and casually asks if he wants to team up. Terrified and bewildered, his character immediately drops to the ground and bows deeply, thanking his new savior with absolute reverence. Exhausted from days of relentless gaming, Dowan attempts to get up from his chair, only to suddenly collapse backward onto the floor in sheer exhaustion. As he lies helpless, headlines flash on screen, highlighting tragic real-world cases of gamers dying from sleep deprivation and extreme fatigue. He finds himself back in the classroom, surrounded by multiple phones mounted on stands, staring blankly ahead as Chuerin casually approaches his desk. She apologizes and asks him to play games for her once again, before waving goodbye and hurrying out of the classroom with a friend. Sitting completely alone at his desk, Dowan breaks out in a cold sweat as a mysterious stat window abruptly pops up in front of him. A glowing notification chimes on screen, announcing that the trait effect of being an overpowered gaming minion is now active. Dowan sits bewildered as reality itself seems stitched together from all the various games he used to grind while acting as everyone's gaming minion. A day, they have the state to drain. How bound. Suddenly, Min Chol-vu slams him face first onto a desk and demands to know why he is getting distracted by his phone instead of playing. Dowan glares back in defiance, prompting Min Chol-vu to grab him by the collar and throw another brutal punch straight to his face. Spitting blood and struggling to stay upright, Dowan barely manages to stagger back to his feet as Min Chol-vu angrily vows to keep beating him until his rage cools down. Just then, the classroom door slides open, and Chuerin walks in asking for her phone, staring in complete shock at the bruised and bloodied scene before her. Seeing Chuerin walk into the classroom, Min Chol-vu immediately grabs her hair and demands to know why she thinks she can do whatever she wants just because guys flatter her. Standing back up on wobbly legs, Dowan yells at him to let her go and threatens to call a teacher. Min Chol-vu tells him to shut up and turns around, throwing another vicious punch toward Dowan's face. Instead of backing down, Dowan suddenly unleashes a blinding flurry of rapid-fire strikes that completely overwhelms the bully. Min Chol-vu staggers backward with a face full of blood, leaving Chuerin staring in absolute disbelief at the sudden turnaround. Sitting stunned on the floor, Dowan catches his breath and wonders what on earth just happened. Typical awakening sequence moment, because getting beaten to a pulp is apparently the best workout routine for a gaming minion. Dowan stares in disbelief as an admin message pops up calling him a comrade and rewarding him for his service, which he quickly realizes refers to the Fire King sword he handed over to world-ending Apocalypse. Another notification blips on screen announcing that monster Min Chul-Vu has been destroyed, leaving Dowan wide-eyed and staring at the chaos around him. As a flood of stat degradation warnings fill his vision, he sits alone in the empty classroom and panics over why his rank is suddenly dropping. Brase, looking back at a childhood memory where he wrote enthusiastic stories about being an overpowered player, he suddenly finds himself grinning wildly despite his bruised face. He frantically checks his glowing stat window again, as system alerts warn him that all his attributes have plummeted to 1 and his active skills are locked. Classic system panic moment, because nothing ruins a sudden power trip faster than immediate stat debuffs. Dowan sits bewildered on the floor, while students gossip in the hallway about how nobody knows who managed to beat up Min Chul-Vu. He wanders down the corridor holding a golden key, nervously muttering to himself as a system notification flashes and another student accidentally bumps into him from behind. Apologizing profusely, the panicked student suddenly gets a nosebleed and bolts away, leaving Dowan sweating and eager to escape the awkward encounter. Walking toward the bathroom, he opens the door and immediately runs into Shin Chaemin leaning against the sink with an e-cigarette. Shin Chaemin smirks and asks if he wants to talk about what happened, instantly catching Dowan off guard. Shin Chaemin flashes a smug smile while telling Dowan that he saw how easily he crushed Min Chul-Vu. Grabbing Dowan by the collar, he invites him to hang out with some girls from another school later that evening. Dowan stammers in disbelief, asking if he's serious and awkwardly lying about attending his grandfather's memorial service to get out of it. Shin Chaemin nonchalantly accepts the excuse and waves goodbye as he exits the bathroom, leaving Dowan to let out a massive sigh of relief. Leaning over a sink with sweat dripping down his face, Dowan suddenly zips open his trousers and unleashes a blinding ball of pure energy that teleports his consciousness straight into a vast green pasture filled with massive grazing water buffaloes. Dowan stammers in surprise when Shin Chaemin suddenly shows up right where he was standing, immediately questioning why he abandoned his grandfather's memorial service. Shin Chaemin catches him in the lie and flashes a menacing glowing grin that leaves Dowan sweating nervously in panic. Just then, Dowan answers a phone call and pretends to talk to his grandfather to quickly escape the awkward confrontation. Walking over to a lit street area nearby, he spots a group of 3 girls approaching and chatting about some guy they saw on a phone. One of the girls points right at him and enthusiastically offers to introduce herself, causing Dowan's face to flush bright red with sudden embarrassment. He stands completely frozen with wide eyes and a blushing face as he tries to process the sudden attention. Dowan sits nervously at a private booth table packed with bottles and snacks while Shin Chaemin pours drinks and casually chats about local hangouts. Suddenly, another bruised student named Yu-Ji Han opens the door and walks in, nervously explaining that he extended their table time by 2 hours. Shin Chaemin leans in close behind Dowan with a sinister grin and curses under his breath, leaving the terrified protagonist shaking in cold sweat. Shin Chaemin then introduces Yu-Ji Han to Dowan and pours another shot of alcohol directly into a cup held by the newcomer. As Yu-Ji Han holds the cup, Shin Chaemin suddenly tips the bottle and splashes liquor all over the poor guy's lap. Shin Chaemin immediately laughs it off and mocks him for wearing gray sweatpants that make it look like he pissed himself, because why not humiliate your errand boy for fun? Yu-Ji Han desperately tries to clean up the mess with tissues while muttering apologies, completely crushed under the pressure. Dowan watches in disbelief as Shin Chaemin casually suggests that Yu-Ji Han should dance to entertain the room. When one of the girls objects to such harsh teasing, Shin Chaemin just laughs it off and insists that Yu-Ji Han loves to dance anyway. Yu-Ji Han quietly complies with a defeated look while the rest of the group laughs at his expense. Feeling completely overwhelmed by the tense atmosphere and constant humiliation, Dowan stammers out an excuse to use the restroom. He quickly leaves the private booth and heads straight for the bathroom to catch his breath. Standing alone in front of the urinal, Dowan grips his head in sheer frustration as the stress finally boils over. Dowan stands outside the private booth feeling completely overwhelmed, wondering why he always ends up in these miserable situations. He turns the doorknob and steps back inside, only to find himself face to face with an angry peer demanding to know why he is staring and making him look bad in front of the girls. Before he can process the hostility, Dowan notices another guy glaring at him aggressively, prompting him to clench his fists in sheer frustration. He walks back into the booth and immediately confronts someone about why they are standing around in just their underwear, but a smiling student casually explains that he washed the guy's pants in a bucket after accidentally spilling vodka on them. Shocked by the utter absurdity of the humiliation, Dowan holds out his hand with a menacing aura to demand the pants back, while a massive, heavily tattooed and bloodied man suddenly steps into the room and glares down at him with an imposing stare. Dowan sits inside the private booth while Shin Chae-min casually asks him why he keeps acting like a complete loser when he is actually strong enough to beat up Min Chol-vu. Suddenly, a stat window pops up right in front of him, issuing a quest to strike Shin Chae-min on the head with a microphone within 30 minutes. Panicking at the impossible demand, Dowan hallucinates a stampede of aggressive buffaloes rushing right at him. He snaps back to reality just as a heavily blood-stained Yuk-man-chun approaches the table and asks if the rumor about Dowan beating up Min Chol-vu is actually true. Yuk-man-chun leans in close with a terrifying glare, warning him that he is dead meat if he falls over, while Shin Chae-min laughs hysterically at the terrifying display. Dowan sweats profusely in sheer terror as Shin Chae-min teases him, calling him a dried anchovy and pointing out how completely helpless he looks. Shin Chae-min leans over Jin-oh and asks him what he wants to discuss, quickly pivoting to suggest they team up and take over the entire Gwanak district together. He explains that this partnership won't be free, listing off steep payments for drinks, cigarettes, and money, before glancing suggestively at a group of female students sitting nearby. Dowan sits frozen and panicked while Shin Chae-min brags that they can get revenge on everyone who ever bullied them and completely swap places with them. A flashback montage flashes across the screen showing past humiliations and fights, including a scene where someone gets slammed face first into a desk. Shin Chae-min casually announces he is heading to the restroom and tells Dowan to take his time thinking about the offer. Left sitting alone with his thoughts, Dowan suddenly breaks out into a wide, unhinged grin as adrenaline and twisted thoughts take over. Dowan sits in the private booth across from a battered classmate who hands him a golden key, explaining that he picked it up in the hallway after bumping into him earlier. The classmate suddenly warns Dowan not to get involved with Shin Chae-min, flashing back to past humiliations and apologizing for upsetting him before scurrying away. Left alone, Dowan bites his finger in mounting panic, while a system window flashes a countdown timer for 3 minutes. He suddenly leaps to his feet and giggles quietly as he sneaks away, only to experience another bizarre vision of elephants roaming across an open savanna. Inside a dark storage room, Dowan bites down hard on a rolled-up towel while wrapped in chains, his eyes glowing with electric blue energy as intense pressure builds up. Back in the private booth, a heavy-set man covered in bloodstains named Yuk-man-chun casually stands up and demands a microphone to sing a song. Classic system timing, because nothing says fun like an urgent countdown while a blood-soaked guy takes over the karaoke machine. Dowan suddenly swings a microphone right into Shin Chae-min's face, instantly knocking him out cold while completing his active system quest. He breathes heavily as he drags the unconscious classmate across the floor, flashing back to earlier beatdowns before propping him up against the wall. Meanwhile, Yuk-man-chun happily belts out a tune on his own microphone inside the private booth until a text message mentioning Shin Chae-min instantly triggers his explosive anger. Realizing what is happening, Dowan sits frozen on the floor with his phone while Yuk-man-chun towers over him with glowing white eyes. A system alert flashes to warn them that a battle is about to start, because Yuk-man-chun has completely lost his temper. Because interrupting a heavy-set guy's karaoke session with phone notifications always ends in extreme violence. Yuk-man-chun immediately stomps forward and kicks Dowan across the room, sending him sprawling to the ground in pain. Dowan crashes onto the floor, gasping in pain as Yuk-man-chun towers over him in a fury. Yuk-man-chun grabs him by the collar, demanding to know why Shin Chae-min would ever choose someone so pathetic to ally with. Ignoring the verbal abuse, Dowan suddenly snaps back and yells that they are the truly pathetic ones for constantly bullying and extorting a helpless kid. Completely losing it at the backtalk, Yuk-man-chun winds up and violently kicks Dowan across the room straight into a stack of boxes. Left lying among the debris, Dowan accidentally triggers a hidden golden key that slips loose and clatters onto the ground. He reaches out, grips the shiny key in his wrapped hand, and stares in utter disbelief as a notification window pops up right in front of his eyes. Dowan stares in disbelief at the glowing system interface, while Yuk-man-chun mocks unconscious Shin Chae-min nearby. Suddenly, a system window warns that ignoring challenges results in punishment, prompting Dowan to charge forward with sparking blue energy. He dashes across the stairs and leaps into a high-flying aerial attack, flashing back to his childhood days at the local arcade where he played games for others. As a younger kid nicknamed Zone Master Zeal, he spent hours dominating arcade cabinets while bullies and peers watched in awe. Back in the present fight, Dowan executes a sharp martial arts strike against his massive opponent. Dowan lands a heavy blow on Yuk-Man-chun, but the massive brute barely flinches and retaliates with a brutal punch that sends Dowan flying across the stairs. Yuk-Man-chun mocks him for acting tough while lying flat on his back, prompting Dowan to clench his teeth in absolute rage. He realizes that a system quest has popped up, demanding him to hit Shin Chi-min on the head with a microphone within 30 minutes to earn a bronze key. Holding the microphone, Dowan approaches an unconscious Shin Chaemin leaning against the wall and successfully strikes him to complete the quest. Right as the quest completion window pops up, Dowan spots a glowing bronze key rolling on the floor and dives forward to grab it. Before he can reach the item, Yuk-Man-chun grabs him by the collar, taunts him for trying to escape, and slams him heavily against the floor. Dowan crashes hard onto the ground while Yuk-Man-chun towers over him with a smug grin, calling him a rat and mocking him for repeatedly getting back up. Yuk-Man-chun presses his shoe heavily onto Dowan's head, demanding to know if he thinks he can survive by baring his teeth. Dowan refuses to back down, warning the brute that he is just a decoy buying time while someone else makes a move. Suddenly, the elevator doors chime open behind Yuk-Man-chun, making his eyes go wide with pure shock. An unconscious voice screams from inside the elevator for everyone to get out and take down the freak, causing Yuk-Man-chun to spin around in sheer panic. He watches in disbelief as the doors slide open, and typical villain realization hits him way too late when he sees the situation spiraling out of control. Dowan wastes no time and frantically scrambles across the floor toward the exit, desperately trying to put some distance between himself and the enraged brute. Dowan crashes violently to the floor as Yuk-Man-chun stomps down hard, leaving him dazed and sprawling on his hands and knees. Gasping for air, he frantically reaches out and slams his hand onto a glowing bronze key to unlock his sealed character points and status info. Suddenly surrounded by crackling blue lightning, Dowan catches his breath and scrambles back up, while Yuk-Man-chun charges furiously down the hallway toward him. Acting on pure instinct, Dowan dodges a wild haymaker and drives a powerful kick straight into his opponent's knee. He uses the opening to vault off Yuk-Man-chun's back with a burst of electric energy, flipping gracefully into the air to unleash a devastating counterattack. Dowan delivers a devastating final kick straight to Yuk-Man-chun's head, sending the massive brawler crashing hard to the floor. A system notification flashes in front of him, confirming that the unexpected quest is complete as he drops back down to his knees, utterly exhausted. He spots a silver key clattering onto the tiles nearby and manages to pick it up while trying to catch his breath. Just as he mutters in disbelief that he actually won, Shin Ji-min appears at the end of the hallway looking completely bewildered by the sudden chaos. Before Dowan can even process what is happening, an even bigger guy steps out and demands to know why his brother is lying unconscious on the ground. This turns out to be Yuk-Man-ok, the 19-year-old older brother of Yuk-Man-chun, who works at the karaoke club. Naturally, because what could possibly go wrong, the doors of the nearby private rooms fly open as more students step out into the hallway to investigate the loud crashing sounds. Dowan stands frozen in the hallway as Yuk-Man-ok demands to know why he attacked his brother, while Shin Chaemin complains that the fight was interrupted and he never intended to make an enemy out of him. Suddenly, chaos erupts when a staff member bursts into the hallway shouting that cops have arrived on the first floor because someone called the authorities. The club employee frantically tells everyone under 18 to clear out through the emergency stairs while he tries to distract the police officers. The crowd of students immediately starts grumbling about the ruined moment as they shuffle down the hallway toward the exit. Yuk-Man-ok casually lifts his unconscious brother over his shoulder and turns to leave, with Shin Chaemin tossing a parting insult that Dowan got lucky. Dowan simply watches them walk away down the corridor, breathing a sigh of relief as the crisis temporarily averts itself. Shin Chi-min points aggressively at Dowan, warning him that everyone remembers his face and that he will not get away with this stunt. As the bruised protagonist stumbles back in a daze, a mysterious system notification suddenly flares up and reveals that a mysterious female student with short dark hair has just intervened to bail him out. Dowan blinks in shock as he realizes he has been dragged into a women's restroom while hiding from the police who are swarming the karaoke club outside. The mysterious girl pinches his cheek to silence his nervous stuttering, explaining that she called emergency services herself by reporting underage drinking to scatter the cops. She reveals that she saw his entire fight and admits she was surprised that a supposed loser could throw hands so well, though she notes he clearly didn't think about the consequences. Dowan wakes up in his bed and answers a phone call from his mother, who angrily scolds him for not calling back for 3 days. He realizes in utter confusion that a whole 3 days have mysteriously vanished while he was sleeping off his exhaustion. His stomach suddenly growls loudly from hunger, prompting him to pick up his phone and contemplate ordering some food with cheese flavor. Meanwhile, flashbacks flash across the screen of the brutal beatdowns he handed out to various bullies earlier at the karaoke club. Returning to his routine, Dowan takes a relaxing shower in his apartment to wash away the stress of the violent night. He then sits down at his desk, powers up his computer, and puts on his pink cat ear headphones to dive back into his gaming session. He ponders over his recent exploits while booting up the system, wondering why someone would go through the trouble of acquiring the Fire King's sword. Settling into his chair, he hears the system chatter on about a world-ending apocalypse event before happily realizing that today marks the start of maple burning time. Dowan reviews his inventory and checks his keys while recalling his massive gaming victories over various monster-like opponents. The doorbell suddenly rings, prompting a joyful reaction as he eagerly expects his food delivery. Instead, a system quest pops up announcing that a visitor wants to get closer to him to satisfy her desire. In his deluge, Dowan turns around in complete shock and discovers a mysterious short-haired female student standing right inside his apartment. She casually drops her hoodie to the floor and bluntly tells him to strip off his clothes. She casually some particular time. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, he stutters and covers his face while blushing deeply at the sudden demand. She stands with a confident, revealing outfit as he tries to process what on earth is happening. Apportioning, classic system logic never fails to turn a simple food delivery into an awkward situation, because what could possibly go wrong when a random girl breaks into your home? He nervously stares at her as the situation escalates instantly into an unexpected confrontation right by his doorway. Dowan immediately strips off his shirt in a panic while staring blankly at the mysterious female student who just barged into his apartment. She browses through his wardrobe and points out his poor clothing choices while reminding him of how she dragged him home unconscious once. A system quest suddenly pops up on his screen, demanding that he accept her desire and satisfy her. After heading out to the streets together, she drags him into a clothing store and forces him to try on various outfits while complaining about his style. He tries on multiple ridiculous looks, sweating nervously under her intense scrutiny until she finally hands him a sleek black leather jacket. She approves of his new black outfit with a calm nod, triggering another system notification that brings a massive wave of relief to his anxious face. He quickly suggests grabbing a bite to eat together at a nearby spot to break the tense atmosphere. Classic system mechanics always know how to turn a wardrobe makeover into a nerve-wracking hostage situation, because why else would a mysterious girl dictate your entire daily schedule? They happily head out to get some food as he finally catches a break from the relentless system notifications. Dowan sits across from Dowan at a local restaurant, slurping down soup, while awkwardly trying to learn her name and strike up a conversation. She calmly tells him her name before plunging the table into dead silence, leaving him sweating nervously as she suddenly asks him what else he wants to know. After sharing a movie date together where he chokes on a drink in panic, another system quest pops up demanding that he sing a sweet song for her at a karaoke booth. He then visits an arcade with her where they passionately hammer away at arcade drums, impressing a couple of random onlookers with their intense rhythm. Because nothing screams romance like winning a giant crane game full of blue-backed anchovies, he suddenly panics and runs off to the restroom, leaving her behind. He returns 10 minutes later completely loaded down with a massive armful of the fish plushies. While wondering where she went, he spots her walking down the arcade hallway and happily calls out her name to catch up with her. Dowan happily calls out Sion's name while clutching his massive pile of anchovy plushies, only to get grabbed by the collar and aggressively interrogated by an unfamiliar guy who demands to know why he is talking to her so familiarly. The aggressive stranger angrily throws him to the floor among his scattered fish, but he quickly backs down and stammers in absolute terror the second Dowan steps forward and sternly tells him off. She firmly introduces Dowan as her boyfriend and orders the startled stranger to clear out and stop ruining their date, leaving the guy and his nervous female companions completely shell-shocked. As the rattled guy quickly retreats, she grabs Dowan's hand and urges him to ignore the weird encounter and keep moving, though he panics and begs her to wait so he can collect his abandoned plushies. She then leads a dazed and blushing Dowan outside into the evening streets while he wonders in disbelief if this is actually happening, and a system quest suddenly pops up with a new objective. The quest titled, "A Boy Becomes a Man 7, instructs him to enter the building because the destination of her desire is right inside. Stepping into the elevator, Dowan nervously checks the floor guide showing rooms up to the 8th floor while fretting to Sion that they might be moving too fast for their age. She casually reassures him that she will take care of everything, leaving him blushing and stammering in disbelief as they arrive on the 7th floor. They walk out into a large conference hall where a projector screen displays Dowan's personal profile and school information at a regular meeting of Gwanak district gang leaders. The gathered delinquents murmur among themselves, recognizing him as the guy who wrecked several fighters in Silam district in a single day while laughing at his ordinary appearance. A system window suddenly chimes with a notification, framing the assembly as a gathering of teenage factions that operate on impulse and violence. As the meeting proceeds, Dowan sweats profusely in sheer panic, wondering just what kind of massive trouble he has walked into this time. Dowan trembles in sheer panic as a glowing system window pops up with an urgent quest, realizing with horror that Si-yun brought him straight into a gathering of dangerous delinquents to sell him out. At the podium, a bespectacled gang leader taps his gavel and calmly proposes electing a new leader for the Barame district, which has remained vacant for far too long. Nearby gang members point and heckle, shouting obscenities at Si-yun and questioning why a total weirdo is standing right next to her. Suddenly, Si-yun grabs the back of Dowan's jacket and loudly announces on behalf of the deputy that he will become the new leader of the Barame district. Dowan's eyes bulge out in utter shock as he stares around the room while the gathered crowd murmurs in disbelief at the sheer absurdity of the claim. Up front, another leader questions if appointing someone who just wrecked their own guys is really a good idea, while Silam district gang leader Hanan Insanin casually taps his phone and supports the crazy nomination because the kid earned the right. Typical gang politics, where getting beaten up somehow qualifies you for a promotion. Dowan stutters in sheer disbelief and protests to Si-yun about becoming a gang leader, but she casually brushes him off and insists she wants him to take the spot. Suddenly, a rival gang member named Kan Se-hoon steps out of the elevator to challenge the nomination, immediately grabbing Dowan by the neck and slamming him to the floor. As Dowan chokes for air on the ground, the presiding gang leader calmly steps in and officially confirms the two competing candidates for the Barame district leadership. Infuriated by the interruption, Kan Se-hoon starts shouting that he will be the true leader and violently kicks Dowan, while other onlookers gossip from the sidelines. Stumbling back to his feet, a battered Dowan gasps for breath and realizes he has no choice but to deal with the sudden confrontation. Dowan stutters and denies wanting any part of the leadership role while backing away in a panic. Standing nearby, Si-yun listens calmly as Kan Se-hoon casually brags that he easily figured her out and tells her to leave the Barame district in his hands. Without warning, Dowan leaps through the air with glowing blue energy and brings down a powerful flying kick directly onto Kan Se-hoon. Spectators gasp and cheer as the impact creates a massive shockwave, but Kan Se-hoon blocks the attack with his forearms and laps off the heavy blow. Frustrated when his strike fails to leave a scratch, Dowan gasps in shock while being held in a tight headlock. As Kan Se-hoon hoists him into the air and squeezes his neck in front of the gathered crowd, a sweating Dowan grinds his teeth in agony. Struggling for air while trapped in the chokehold, Dowan suddenly suffers a flashback to a familiar face and recognizes his opponent from somewhere before. Trapped in the memory flashback, Dowan suddenly recalls how a younger Kan Se-hoon used to ruthlessly bully and humiliate him during their middle school days by putting him in brutal chokeholds and forcing him to endure endless humiliation. Back in the present, Dowan lies unconscious and completely defeated on the floor while surrounding gang members mock his pathetic display. As typical school bully lore dictates, picking fights with the main antagonist without checking your level first always ends in disaster. Kan Se-hoon casually stretches his arms and gloats over his easy victory while watching the battered protagonist struggle to breathe. Left lying face down on the cold ground with drool dripping from his mouth, Dowan slowly regains consciousness while listening to the surrounding gang members laughing at his miserable defeat. As Dowan lies pinned to the floor under a brutal chokehold, surrounding gang members laugh and mock his chances of winning as absolute zero. Staring wide-eyed in panic, Dowan suddenly remembers that a crucial one-time use skill was blocked right at the start of the fight. Snapping back to the present, Kan Se-hoon casually sheds his outer jacket and boldly announces that he will now become the leader of the Barame district. Left lying face down on the cold ground while onlookers whisper in shock, the battered protagonist frantically searches his memory for a way out. Flashbacks reveal that this intense defeat actually happened 7 hours prior in his apartment room, where Dowan was rummaging through his clothes. Suddenly, a system notification pops up to announce he has defeated the monster named Yukmon Chun, after which Dowan discovers a silver key in his hand. He presses the key into a mysterious slot on his passive skill interface, triggering a massive burst of blue energy that unlocks a brand new ability. Staring in sheer disbelief at the floating admin window, Dowan reviews the details of his newly acquired passive skill, with wide, astonished eyes. Revisiting the memory of his past gaming session, Dowan recalls lamenting over a low-mana pool that rendered a risky skill completely unusable. Pushing past his doubts, he returns to the brutal present fight against Kansei Hon and throws a direct punch straight at his opponent's chest. To his absolute horror, the punch bounces off harmlessly while Kansei Hon mocks his weak attacks and grabs him by the throat. Desperate to turn the tables, Dowan leaps into the air and delivers a furious flying kick that slams Kansei Hon crashing backward into a heavy metal server rack. The system immediately chimes in with a cold reminder that fatal strikes are required, leaving the protagonist gasping for air as the dust settles around them. Classic system logic, right? Give the player a 1% chance skill and expect them to survive a beatdown. Lying defeated on the ground, Dowan watches in disbelief as Kansei Hon casually flexes his arms and taunts him for only bluffing with empty threats. Flashbacks hit hard as Kansei Hon suddenly recalls their middle school days together, pointing out that Dowan was actually a ruthless bully who terrorized others alongside his gang. Photos flash across the panels showing heavy-set bullies torturing victims while bystanders watched in silence, leaving Dowan wide-eyed with pure panic. Walking closer with a smug grin, Kansei Hon looms over the terrified protagonist who desperately tries to kick him away in self-defense. Classic bully logic right here. Punch someone to the floor, and then act like the victim when karma comes knocking. Kansei Hon effortlessly catches the weak kick, swings Dowan around by the ankle, and hurls him violently back into the metal racks. As groans echo through the hall, Si-yun steps forward alongside Han In-son to tell the brawler to call it quits, but Dowan remains pinned to the floor, trembling in absolute terror. Standing over the fallen protagonist, Kansei Hon cracks his knuckles and casually stretches while asking if the beaten boy is ready to give up yet. Desperate to survive, Dowan flashes a sweaty, terrified grin and laughs awkwardly while claiming they were good friends back in middle school. Naturally, that pathetic excuse completely fails, as Kansei Hon glares down and asks why he is suddenly changing his tune after just calling him a fat weirdo. Backed into a corner, Dowan plays along with a fake smile, insisting that friends always curse at each other anyway. Without warning, Dowan suddenly leaps forward and taps Kansei Hon on the chest, triggering an explosive burst of blue energy that generates a massive shockwave. The sheer force hurls Kansei Hon backward through the air, sending him crashing violently into a row of metal lockers. As the dust settles and onlookers stare in absolute shock, Dowan sits stunned on the floor while realizing his sudden counterattack actually worked. As the gathered crowd murmurs in disbelief over the sudden blast, the onlookers whisper back and forth while wondering what on earth just happened to Kansei Hon. Meanwhile, back in the real world, Dowan sits frozen and dazed at a PCB computer terminal while another student frantically shakes his shoulders and asks if he is about to kick the bucket. Snapping back to reality with a jolt, Dowan stares wide-eyed at his screen as a system notification flashes across the monitor. Seeing that even an underdog like him managed to pull it off, a maniacal grin spreads across his face as he realizes despair can actually turn into success. Energized by his digital triumph, Dowan charges forward in the fight and launches a furious running punch directly at Kansei Hon. Closing the distance instantly, he follows up with another devastating strike straight to his opponent's solar plexus, refusing to let up the pressure. Struggling to catch his breath after taking a heavy blow, Kansei Hon spits up blood and glares at his opponent with pure fury. Thinking about how the nose is always a fighter's ultimate weak spot, Dowan decides to target his rival's most vulnerable feature just like an apex predator attacking a shark. He lunges forward and delivers a brutal strike straight to Kansei Hon's nose, sending shockwaves through the arrogant brawler. Staggering backward in agony, Kansei Hon clutches his bleeding face and vows to murder him for the humiliation. Suddenly leaping onto his back from behind, Dowan slaps a tight chokehold around his neck and demands that he surrender immediately. With absolute desperation in his wide eyes, he violently grabs and twists his opponent's nose to secure the brutal submission. If that, standing over the fallen rival, Dowan catches his breath while surrounding gang members gasp in utter shock at his brutal victory. Suddenly, an exposed electrical wire sparks near a damaged server unit, triggering a massive fiery explosion that engulfs the hallway in chaos. Panicked bystanders start screaming about a fire and rush toward the elevators, only to find them jammed shut. Trapped by the rushing crowd, Dowan gets swept down the stairwell along with the fleeing mob into the street outside. Sitting exhaustedly on a nearby concrete block, he wonders where Si-yun disappeared to amid the confusion. Other gang members nearby speculate that she might still be inside helping out, leaving Dowan to sprint back toward the building entrances in a panic. Stumbling out of a smoke-filled building, Sha Jen-ah carries an unconscious gang member over his shoulder while announcing that the meeting is postponed due to the fire. He congratulates Ha Dawan on officially becoming the new leader of the Barame district before walking away. We canted be, unpercher, unest. Left outside in the cool night air, Dowan stands stunned until Sion approaches him with a reassuring smile. She explains that she helped him secure the leadership position because she has her own grand plans in motion. Walking back toward his neighborhood together, Dawan casually pulls out a small stuffed fish from his pocket and hands it to her as a parting gift. Sion stares at the toy in bewilderment as it suddenly squeaks right in her hand, leaving her completely speechless. The next morning, Ha Dawan arrives at school wearing his full uniform and carrying a massive pile of black clamps, muttering nervously about his seating arrangement. He peeks into classroom 2-3 to find someone already there, accidentally dropping the entire heavy bundle of equipment with a loud crash. Mortified by the sudden noise, he squeaks out an apology before realizing the desk belongs to Han In-san from Shinan High School. Standing frozen in panic outside, Dawan spots Sion walking nearby with another student and suddenly realizes what his new responsibilities actually entail. Classic gang leader logistics, always bringing more paperwork than actual power. Recall Firth, new teen, Badrab. Che Jin towers over a sweating Dowan in the classroom, grabbing him by the collar and demanding to know why he showed up. Stuttering in absolute terror, Dowan points out that they are on the same side, but Jin coldly steps on his foot and dismisses his panic entirely. He casually tosses Dawan to the floor with a shove, explaining that gang rules allow members to settle conflicts through raw strength. Sitting on the classroom floor with wide, sweating eyes, Dawan listens as Jin reassures him that nobody from the Silam gang will dare touch him now, because nothing says protection like your fellow gang leader using you as a doormat on the first day of school. As a person, Dawan wanders through the school hallways during the breaks, observing how classmates start targeting weaker victims and bullying them with complete impunity. EPN, classic school hierarchy at work, where what could possibly go wrong when delinquent gangs run the entire student body. He watches local bullies ambush an overweight student and mock him for drawing Mako-san on his desk, laughing off the cruelty as standard entertainment. Suddenly, a violent crash echoes through the corridor as another student gets launched headfirst into the wall right past him. Dawan looks down at the defeated fighter sprawled across the floor in agony, realizing that rival gang members within the same class inevitably clash for dominance. A muscular brawler with an exposed midriff steps forward to claim leadership of the classroom while his punk companion smirks approvingly. Standing quietly in the hallway, Dawan stares blankly ahead as his gaming system interface projects surreal images of a panther mauling a deer and a colorful parrot nearby. Dawan sits in the classroom looking bewildered while talking to a student before suddenly spotting Shin Chemin nearby. He watches as Shin Chemin violently punches someone across the face during a sudden scuffle while a female student looks on in shock. A flashback flashes across the panels showing Dawan delivering a devastating flying kick against a large opponent and punching another rival in a black shirt. Back in the present, Jin approaches Dawan while he is sitting on the floor and assures him that nobody from the Silam district gang will touch him anymore. Sitting back at his desk, Dawan notices his phone setup and decides he no longer needs it, unhooking the cables and bundling them up. He looks down at his hands with wide eyes when another student walks up and casually asks if he is not playing today. Chu Arin suddenly appears at Dawan's classroom desk and hands him a purple gift box as a token of gratitude for saving her. Dawan nervously opens the box with wide sweating eyes, only to discover a live, wriggling octopus inside that she claims will help him recover his strength. Before he can process the bizarre gift, Sosano approaches him in a dark hoodie and bluntly asks him to clear a game level for him. A moment later, as Chu Arin asks if they are friends, Dawan stammers out a denial while staring in shock. The scene cuts to a photo laboratory where two gang members inspect photographs of Dawan looking terrified and shivering during recent events, analyzing whether his submissive behavior is genuine fear or a calculated act. Dawan approaches Sosano at his desk and demands to know why he should clear a game level for him, but Sosano just sits quietly with his head down. Meanwhile, in a photo laboratory, Han In-san and a tattooed gang member inspect photographs of Sosano covered in blood next to an unconscious victim, amused that the unstable fighter ended up in the same class as Dawan. Back in the classroom, Dawan aggressively flashes his phone in Sosano's face and threatens to call Han In-san to report his attitude. Sosano slowly raises his head with a menacing glare and dark circles under his eyes, completely unfazed by the threat. As typical high school dynamics go, Threatening a violent gang member while having an octopus stuck to your head is definitely a bold strategy. Dowan stands frozen in panic with his phone out while the little octopus sits right on top of his head. Sosan stares at him with narrowed, intense eyes before casually taking the phone and offering a nonchalant apology. Because nothing says high school diplomacy quite like threatening a dangerous gang member while having seafood stuck to your hair. Meanwhile, in the hallway, students rush around in a panic over lunch queue positioning while Sosan strolls out of the classroom with his hands in his pockets. He heads down to the cafeteria entrance where a bulky third-year student blocks his path and smugly tells him to back off because his class goes next. Sosan just stands right behind the massive upperclassman, makes a phone call, and announces with a blank expression that he has blocked the doorway and that a teacher is currently eating inside anyway. Dowan points out that Sosan is in their class, but Shan stammers in a panic and warns him to be much more careful. He reminds Dowan that Sosan is completely unpredictable and might suddenly snap into a dangerous rage without warning. Sosan overhears the chatter, narrows his dark eyes with a terrifying expression, and casually calls the upperclassman a pot-bellied brat. The bulky upperclassman instantly flares up, demanding to know what is wrong with Sosanu's eyes and asking if he has a problem with the senior eating first. Sosanu just flashes a cold, cocky smile and retorts with a casual insult that completely shatters the senior's patience. The enraged upperclassman swings a punch with lightning speed, but Sosan effortlessly slips the strike and lands a brutal counter-punch right to his midsection. He follows up with a relentless flurry of lightning-fast punches that slam into the upperclassman's body, leaving the larger student gasping in total shock. Sosan glares down at the panicking senior with wide, unhinged eyes and mockingly asks if he really thought he was faster. Dowan watches in shock as Sosan stands over a brutally beaten upperclassman lying limp against the bloody wall. Sosan calmly touches his bleeding lip with a deadpan stare, completely unfazed by the carnage he just caused. The surrounding students freeze in terror as Sosan casually walks away down the hallway, leaving everyone else sweating and terrified. Later that evening, Dowan walks home from school with a live octopus and a jar of salt water tucked into his backpack, totally caught off guard when his phone suddenly dings with a notification. He freaks out as the system bombards him with unexpected alerts, complaining that his peaceful day is ruined yet again. Meanwhile, Sosan corners a terrified student against a wall in a dark alleyway, demanding to know if the panicked kid thinks he is faster. The beaten student cowers on the ground, clinging desperately to Sosanu's leg while sobbing apologies and babbling excuses about running late for tutoring classes. Dowan drops his backpack on the ground in a dark alleyway and approaches a beaten student who is sobbing on the pavement. He offers a gray rag to the crying boy, asking if he wants to take revenge on his tormentors, remembering his own days as a helpless outcast. Dowan tells the kid not to worry because he is going to crush his enemies. He flashes a manic, wide-eyed grin while holding up a ring of keys with a golden key at the front. Walking down the street afterward, he checks his system notification and realizes the quest titled "The Boy Becomes a Man" is successfully completed. He panics for a second, realizing he accidentally became a gangster instead of a proper man, but quickly shakes off the shock. Staring at the keys in his hand, he wonders how he managed to collect several district keys all at once. Dowan crouches in the alleyway and stares down at the collection of district keys in his hands, wondering how he managed to acquire so many at once. He starts inserting the golden key into a glowing system lock, hoping it unlocks a genuinely useful reward instead of just more mana points. Glancing nervously at his active skill window, he frantically taps the screen to trigger the next feature while sweat drips down his face. Nearby, a fierce flashback shows Sosan ruthlessly attacking rival gang members and slamming them against a wall with brutal force. Meanwhile, out on the street, Erin hurries past a bus stop and dashes away while apologizing to passersby. Standing nearby with a red backpack, Sosan watches her run off with a cold, blank expression. What an ace. Dowan hurriedly catches his breath after rushing to escape, unaware that Sosan has stealthily closed in right behind him. He spins around in sheer panic, just as Sosan grabs the handle of his backpack with a menacing grip. Reacting on pure survival instinct, Dowan launches into the air and delivers a powerful flying kick straight to his attacker's face. Sosan stumbles backward onto the pavement, gasping for air while clutching his chest in agony. With a wild grin, Dowan mocks his opponent's speed and immediately follows up with a lightning-fast triple strike combo that leaves Sosan completely reeling. Dowan reels in pain as Sosan quickly counters his assault with a brutal barrage of punches. Recovering his footing, Dowan lunges forward with an electric-infused palm strike, blasting Sosan backward through the air. Sosan crashes violently into the ground alongside a row of fallen opponents, spitting blood in disbelief. Standing over his fallen rival with a furious expression, Sosanu demands a rematch and stomps the ground in rage. He corners the bruised and exhausted Dowan, leaning in close to mockingly offer him a choice between becoming a vegetable or suffering lower body paralysis. Spitting out blood and flashing a crazed grin, Dowan rejects the threats and suddenly dashes forward to retaliate. He unleashes a lightning-infused palm strike that lands squarely on Sosonu, sending him stumbling back in utter shock. Flashing a manic smile, Dowan squares his shoulders and drops into a fighting stance as his attack power stat hits 31. Sosanu quickly shakes off the surprise and charges back into the fray with a fierce scowl, lunging directly at his opponent. Trading rapid punches, both fighters push their battered bodies to the absolute limit while exchanging heated remarks across the playground. Ex-Brown, Dowan absorbs a direct hit to his arm before stumbling backward with a pained gasp, muttering curses as he struggles to keep his footing. Sosanu mocks his resilience with a loud laugh, boldly boasting about how tough his own head is while stepping forward to press the advantage. Rushing back into combat, Dowan lashes out with glowing blue lightning strikes, but Sosanu effortlessly ducks and pivots away from the flurry. Sosanu abruptly turns the tables with a devastating high kick that catches Dowan square in the jaw, sending him crashing hard to the ground, spitting out a tooth from the sheer impact. Dowan flashes a wild manic grin and asks if Sosanu really thinks a naked eye can track his attacks. Enraged by the defiance, Sosanu drops his guard for a split second as Dowan suddenly leaps up and delivers a brutal roundhouse kick straight to his face. Sosanu stumbles back with wide, panicked eyes while Dowan collapses onto the pavement, completely drained from the exhausting exchange. Dowan lies flat on the ground, catching his breath, while a floating status window appears to display his stats and level information. Irritated by his confusion, Sosanu taunts him with typical gamer logic before launching into another ruthless assault. Dodging the attack, Dowan counters with a blazing blue lightning strike that slams straight into Sosanu's chest with explosive force. Sosanu stumbles backward, coughing up a glowing energy trail, but quickly recovers and lunges forward with a flying kick. Ducking just in time, Dowan sweeps his leg and sends Sosanu crashing violently onto the pavement. Crawling over, Dowan grabs Sosanu by the collar of his hoodie and pulls himself up to land a vicious point-blank punch to the jaw. Sosanu drops flat on his back with wide, unseeing eyes while clutching a wooden piece, finally defeated after a grueling endurance test. Panting heavily, Dowan regains his footing as the dust settles around him, realizing that surviving this brutal street fight required every trick in his arsenal. Sosanu flashes back to a painful memory on an athletic podium where he took second place behind a rival while an older man in a suit handed him a trophy and demanded first place at any cost. Back in his dark room, Sosanu violently beats a fallen figure on the floor with a crutch, screaming in frustration about an accident that ruined his leg and his father's expectations. Limping away, he warns the bruised, red-haired boy on the floor not to disappoint him again at the next competition, leaving behind shattered trophies and lingering resentment. Fast-forwarding to the present night outside, Sosanu stands waiting on outdoor steps until Dowan approaches from behind with a spinning key attack. The surprise strike sends Sosanu crashing down in a flurry of blood as dark, intrusive thoughts take over his mind about someone stealing his rightful first place. With a manic expression smeared in blood, Sosanu lets out his pent-up rage while gripping a wooden piece, finally letting his deeply troubled past bubble entirely to the surface. Sosanu rants that he had to quit track and field because of that jerk, yelling that his father abandoned him and blaming someone else for ruining his life before he even turned 14. Amidst his furious tirade, Sosanu suddenly grabs the live octopus gifted earlier by Chu Aaron and hurls it straight at Dowan's face. The poor cephalopod splatters dark ink all over Sosanu's eyes, blinding him and sending him into a blind panic as he screams in frustration. Seizing the opening, Dowan drops his brick and delivers a brutal kick directly to Sosanu's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. The battle escalates as Dowan unleashes another heavy lightning-infused strike, trading fierce blows with his opponent in a chaotic brawl. Dowan delivers the finishing blow, sending Sosanu crashing heavily to the ground, where he lies completely knocked out with ink covering his face. Relieved that the brutal fight is finally over, Dowan spots a fresh set of district keys lying nearby on the pavement and picks them up with an eager grin. He opens his system interface and uses the gold key to unlock his physical strength stats, watching his power parameters surge to the maximum. Feeling totally pumped up by his newfound superhuman stats, he kneels down to marvel at the system notification confirming his success. He even remembers to check on the little octopus resting on the ground nearby, glad it survived the chaotic brawl. Typical gaming protagonist move, right? always stopping to admire the loot while covered in blood. Dowan decides to keep the live octopus as a pet, proudly naming it Little Worm, before an orange cat suddenly snatches the creature away in its mouth. Panicking, Dowan sprints after the cat down the street, shouting in disbelief as the animal bolts away with his new companion. He retreats to his apartment later that evening to take a breather, but his phone rings unexpectedly with a call from his mother. She casually asks about his first day of school while mentioning she is currently away on a business trip in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, momentarily freaking him out when he mishears it as another world. After finishing the call, he pauses to look at a family photo on the shelf where his father's face is obscured by a bright flash of light. He shakes off the somber mood and stands up to grab some food, deciding that tonight calls for a meal of braised octopus and sauce, typical multitasking protagonist energy, grieving your dad and fighting gang members by day, craving seafood by night. Kim Yosef sits shirtless in an office chair holding a red pipe wrench, interrogating his men about Sosona losing to the Barame district leader. Jibek Chan stands nearby in a green jacket, sternly questioning the captured and battered Soson U who is tied to a chair. Kim Yosef suddenly launches a brutal flying kick that sends Soson U crashing across the room into a metal wall. Standing over the bruised teenager, Kim Yosef angrily mocks his athletic background and abandoned family ties while tossing a gym bag filled with weighted sandbags onto the floor. Meanwhile, Khan-in Khan steps forward with a serious expression and states that he will handle this matter himself. Back at school, Dowan sits quietly in his classroom while classmates whisper in shock that Sosan have failed to show up for the day. A panicked student suddenly bursts through the classroom doorway, gasping for air as he warns that strange and dangerous thugs have arrived looking for trouble. A group of menacing thugs bursts into the classroom looking for Dowan, while a short-haired delinquent grabs a terrified student by the head and demands to know if this is room 23. Dowan sits sweating and pale at his desk as the intimidating intruder walks up and cheerfully introduces himself, demanding that Dowan accompany them to the Bonchon district. Typical gang recruitment strategy, right? Just walk into a random classroom and start taking orders. Fortunately, Han In-san casually steps into the doorway in his suit and calmly asks what they are doing there, before suddenly launching a vicious spinning kick that completely flattens the thug. Standing over the groaning goon, Han In-san fixes the remaining intruders with a piercing glare and asks if they think they can handle him. Dowan watches in sheer panic as the aggressive Bonchon district thugs charge directly at Han In-san. But instead of getting overwhelmed, Han In-san casually sidesteps their rush and delivers a devastating acrobatic flip that sends one thug crashing hard into the classroom lockers. He calmly ignores the chaos while the remaining thugs panic, shouting frantic insults and desperately swinging chairs at him. With effortless precision, Han In-san spins through the air and delivers a brutal axe kick that slams his attacker flat onto the floorboards. He brushes off the dust with a cool sigh, muttering about how troublesome high school brawls really are. Just as things seem settled, a heavily built man with a shaved head and facial tattoo steps forward from the background, eyeing the scene with a cold and imposing stare. Yukmon Chun glares at the wreckage in the classroom and questions if Khan In-san really thinks he can walk away from this without Bonchon district retaliating. Shan In-san ignores the threats and casually tells Yukmon Chun that he better clean up the huge mess left behind. Yukmon Chun bristles with anger and tries to grab him by the collar, but pauses instantly when Han In-san grips his wrist with a cold warning. Defeated and sweaty, Yukmon Chun watches silently as Han In-san turns around and walks out of the room with a smug smirk. Later, Dowan nervously thanks Han In-san while holding a drink outside the school store, and Han In-san reassures him that they are on the same side. Dowan sits in a PBang, sweating nervously as Han In-san leans over him to mockingly ask why he picked a fight with Bonchon district. Dowan nervously wipes his mouth and chuckles, proudly declaring himself a bully hunter before realizing Han In-san is completely unimpressed. Han In-san holds up a strawberry milk carton and sarcastically wishes him good luck with that, leaving Dowan utterly baffled and terrified of another Bonchon attack. Flashback to earlier, Dowan laughs maniacally while sitting at a PPA computer and bragging to other kids that he spent all his New Year's allowance on the game. Two younger kids scramble away to the restroom, leaving Dowan smiling with blushing cheeks as he admires his rare avatar. Suddenly, Chuerian walks up behind him carrying a tray of ramen and gasps in surprise when she realizes it is Dowan. Apatokors Y.N. Dowan spins around in his chair and stammers in disbelief while asking if she works here, and Chuerian casually explains that she only helps her dad out from time to time. Dowan panics as Chuerian rushes over while he realizes in horror that his game character has been stripped of all its items. Two terrified younger kids run up to Chuerin and explain that someone stole all their in-game items while they were in the restroom. Shadavan sweats profusely and admits to Chuerin that he actually witnessed the thieves, prompting the crying younger boy to grab his sleeve and desperately beg for help. Chuerin and the young boy turn to Shadavan with worried expressions, urging him to do something while classic gaming justice kicks in. His while baby here, outside on the street, the Bonchon district thugs casually smoke in an alleyway and laugh about selling the stolen game items for drinks. Suddenly, a powerful glowing blue strike blasts one of the thugs backward onto the pavement, sending his phone clattering to the ground. Dowan confronts the terrified thieves in the alleyway and proudly declares that ruining a rookie's dream as a gamer is unforgivable. He pats a weeping younger boy on the head and casually tells him to keep playing while he handles the situation before his ramen gets soggy. Slinging his heavy white puffer jacket over his shoulder, Dowan marches out of the PCB and spots the thugs hanging around outside. He steps right up to them with a furious flush on his cheeks and demands they attack before he makes the first move. One of the thugs instantly gets sent flying backward onto the pavement with a brutal strike from Dowan. "An hour for hire, Kide," said Dowan. The rest of the gang panics and scrambles away in terror, leading Dowan on a frantic chase through the neighborhood streets. He sprints after them into a narrow dead-end alleyway while shouting that they cannot escape. However, the pursuers reach the end of the alleyway only to find that Dowan has completely vanished from the dead end. Dowan peers into the dead-end alleyway while the chasing thugs desperately search for him in confusion. Suddenly, Dowan drops down from a high ledge right behind them with glowing blue eyes and unleashes a devastating falcon lunge that sends one thug crashing into a pile of trash. The remaining gang members freeze in absolute shock as Dowan strides forward with a relaxed grin and introduces himself. One thug tries to charge him in a panic, but Dowan casually counters with a lightning-fast strike called Piercing, doubling him over in pain. Standing over his coughing opponents, Dowan mockingly tells them they are like turtles compared to Sosanu. Typical delinquent logic: corner a guy in a dead end, only to find out you are the one trapped with the protagonist. Dowan calmly blocks the alley exit and asks the panicking thugs why they are running away. One thug curses and whispers a desperate plan to circle around him from both sides. Dowan charges up with crackling blue lightning and asks if they know that numbers do not matter in games. He throws his arms wide with a cheerful grin and declares that weak mobs are still just weak mobs, no matter how many you group together. Classic gamer mindset, treating local gang members like starter zone trash mobs. Unleashing a devastating skill called Roundup Hunt, Dowan blasts through the group with a flurry of glowing blue shockwaves. The system immediately announces that Thieves 2 and 3 are defeated as both thugs crash hard onto the pavement. But even Dowan stands over his fallen enemies and lets out a long breath while looking at his open palm. Suddenly, his hand pulses with a strange heavy vibration that leaves him staring in wide-eyed shock. Dowan watches the defeated thug grovel on the ground and beg for mercy while promising never to steal again. He turns around and walks away, but suddenly stops as his chest pulses with a heavy physical vibration beneath his sweatshirt. Realizing he is about to miss his quest reward, Dowan spins back around and delivers a flying kick that knocks the thug flat on his back. The system flashes a victory notification confirming the defeat of 4 opponents, rewarding him with a silver key. He sits on the pavement and laughs cheerfully while inspecting his new prize. Heading back inside the PPA, Dowan finds the terrified thugs bowing deeply on the floor before a younger boy seated in a gaming chair. The thugs apologize profusely and promise to turn over a new leaf before rushing out when a phone call comes in. Dowan returns to his conversation with the female staff member, who notices his overcooked ramen and offers to buy him a snack. He blushes deeply and grins with flushed cheeks, telling her he will be right back after changing his clothes. Dowan flashes back to his elementary school days, recalling how he first met Chuerin when she stepped in to defend a bullied classmate. When he remembers being terrified of her ruthless leadership and how they eventually parted ways to attend different middle schools 3 years later. Snapping back to the present at the PC VOG, Dowan freezes when a familiar female voice calls out to him in the courtyard, asking if he dropped something. He turns around to find an older Chuerin holding his stray equipment clamps with a bright smile. She hands the strange gear back to him, and he accepts it with a flustered stutter while blushing deep red. Classic protagonist panic sets in as her casual touch sends magical shockwaves and pink cherry blossom petals flying everywhere around him. Recovering slightly, Dowan heads back inside and rests in a gaming chair while joyfully admiring his newly acquired silver key reward. He sits back and laughs aloud in relief, completely unaware of the sudden strange sensation rushing through his body. Dowan spins around in his gaming chair with wide, sweating eyes as Erin casually approaches him with a bright smile. She asks what he is doing, and he stutters out a flustered reply while blushing furiously under her gaze. She invites him out for a quick meal, and he excitedly jumps up to recommend his favorite spot before she teasingly insists on choosing instead. They end up sharing a bubbling pot of mint chocolate tikobaki, which leaves Dowan staring in absolute horror at the glowing green concoction. Typical system quest logic strikes again as a flashback window pops up, showing the pair enjoying various bizarre dates together across town. Erin asks if he dislikes the meal, prompting a sweating Dowan to shovel the minty noodles into his mouth with an enthusiastic thumbs up while covered in green sauce. He starts sweating bullets and panicking internally as she leans in close, lowering her voice to suggest they head to another location together. Dowan sits across from Erin in a private booth as they transition from mint chocolate tikobaki to a high-stakes game of Jenga. He nervously watches her pull a block, but her shaky hands ultimately cause the entire tower to come crashing down in a heap of wooden pieces. They decide to switch activities and test out a lie detector machine, taking turns answering personal questions about each other. Dowan crosses his arms and asks if she finds him attractive, which prompts an immediate positive response from Erin as the machine flashes green. She then turns the tables and asks if he considers her pretty, leading to another truthful confession and a baffled reaction from the gadget when it registers green yet again. Classic polygraph logic dictates that a broken machine is far more entertaining than actual honesty, so they shrug it off and start browsing the shelves for a new board game to play. Dowan steps outside the board game cafe only to realize a battered and furious Sosano is trailing right behind him with a bruised crew. Sosano angrily spots him disappearing into the crowd, muttering threats about smashing his face in while his thugs laugh it off. Meanwhile, Dowan and Erin wander over to a street game booth where a friendly elderly man invites them to try a hammer-swinging challenge. Erin gives it a weak tap, prompting the game host to tease that the boy looks even weaker than a girl. Triggered by the playful insult, Dowan's system suddenly activates with a blue geometric targeting grid and issues a bizarre quest demanding that he hit Erin in the head as hard as possible. He raises the hammer high with a maniacal grin, but the system notification chimes loudly in his head and forces him to abruptly freeze mid-swing. Sweat pours down his face as he stares wide-eyed at Erin, realizing the system nearly forced him to assault his childhood friend. Dowan nervously sweats while gripping a red toy hammer at the street game stall, struggling against the system's compulsion to strike his childhood friend. Erin calmly asks what is wrong, unaware that a bizarre quest is forcing him to attack her head-on. He raises the hammer high and swings it down toward the yellow pot she wears on her head, but he purposefully deflects the blow to avoid hurting her. The game host laughs and points out that he missed, teasing that he still has 2 attempts left to try again. They settle into a round of rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets to swing the toy hammer next. Erin wins the match and immediately leaps forward to bash the yellow pot on Dowan's head with surprising enthusiasm. After half to street entry, Tot enterhaved in HEA. He stumbles back in shock with wide eyes, while she cheerfully adjusts her helmet and celebrates her victory. She takes another turn at rock, paper, scissors and wins again, immediately winding up to smack him across the head with the toy hammer. He glares in frustration as she giggles mischievously, completely enjoying the chaotic game at his expense. Dowan swings the red toy hammer down with all his might, successfully completing the chaotic street game challenge. He receives his reward in a shopping bag and awkwardly hands the broken toy over to a passing student before walking away through the crowded evening streets. Meanwhile, Erin suddenly covers her face and bursts into laughter as the absurdity of the situation hits her all over again. He nervously sweats while glancing sideways at her, wondering why she is finding the memory of getting hit so funny. She giggles uncontrollably and admits she has never been struck with such a loud sound before, even offering to let him hit her back if he wants. Her phone suddenly rings with a call from her father, forcing her to announce that she needs to head back to the PC Fiong. Noun sauce. She smiles warmly and thanks Dowan for such a fun day, and he quickly echoes her sentiment with a flustered expression. Dowan waves goodbye as Erin hurries back toward school, only to be suddenly grabbed by a scarred thug named Mon-chun on the phone. He yelps in surprise as Mon-chun casually informs his caller that he has found the guy in the white puffer jacket. Mon-chun approaches him with a menacing grin and explains that he came to stand up for the subordinates Dowan beat up earlier. Dowan flashes back to effortlessly wiping out those thugs with lightning-infused strikes and system powers just moments ago. Mon-chun dismisses any desire for revenge, claiming he has more urgent matters to attend to, and turns to walk away. Dowan politely bows and says goodbye, but freezes when Yuk Man-chun asks if the girl he was just with went to the nearby PC Vion. Yuk Man-chun smiles viciously and declares his intention to play with her, calling her an easy target because she was hanging out with someone like Dowan. Losing his temper entirely, Dowan reaches out and grabs a fistful of Yuk Man-chun's jacket collar in a sudden surge of protective rage. Dowan grabs Yuk Man-chun by the jacket collar and tells him to follow him, earning a surprised look from the scarred thug. Yuk Man-chun adjusts his cap, chuckles at the sudden hostility, and triggers a system quest warning that he is angered by the player's provocation. Dowan charges forward in an alleyway and throws a flurry of punches, but Yuk Man-chun shrugs them off and scoffs at the weak assault. Yuk Man-chun notes that he heard the protagonist took out those other guys in a single hit and figured he was some kind of powerhouse, while Dowan stumbles back, clutching his chest in pain. Sweating profusely with a fierce glare, Dowan clenches his fists and vows not to let the thug get away. Yuk Man-chun chuckles darkly, reaches into his pocket, and slips on a pair of brass knuckles with a confident smirk. He announces that he cannot let that slide and declares that he will knock out all of Dowan's teeth. Before Yuk Man-chun can strike, Dowan swings a glowing weapon in a wide arc, unleashing a rapid combo of strikes that batters the thug back against the wall. Yuk Man-chun stares in disbelief as Dowan casually pulls out a squeaky toy hammer instead of a real weapon. And Chun, Scubbert. Dowan flashes a wide grin, taps the squeaky toy against his own head, and taunts the thug for falling for another system trick. Enraged by the mockery, Yuk Man-chun lunges forward with a furious roar, but Dowan triggers his weapon mastery skill and parries the brass knuckles with a glowing strike. Yuk Man-chun manages to slip past the defense and grabs Dowan in a tight clinch, laughing maniacally as he points out that the oversized hammer is now useless at close range. Dowan gritted his teeth and proves him wrong by repeatedly smashing the heavy rubber head of the hammer straight into the thug's back. Yuk Man-chun drops his brass knuckles in agony as the relentless bludgeoning forces him to release his grip. Dowan raises the toy hammer high above his head with both hands, declaring that justice will punish him. Dowan calls out in shock as Yuk Man-chun suddenly retaliates with a brutal punch straight to his face. Staggering back from the impact, Dowan looks down in disbelief at his broken toy hammer scattered across the ground in pieces. Yuk Man-chun flashes a manic grin, mocking him for being completely useless without his prop weapon. Crouched on the pavement and clutching his injured face, Dowan glares up as the heavy-set thug swings his brass knuckles and knocks him flat to the ground again. Standing over his fallen opponent, Yuk Man-chun laughs manically and boasts that he will beat him half to death before dragging him off to target Chuerin. Pushing himself up with a cold glare, Dowan mutters under his breath and mocks the thug for reciting such cliché lines from a third-rate villain. Typical second-rate thug dialogue never gets old, does it? Does it? Lying on the pavement, Dowan glares up at the towering thug and asks why everyone like him is so eager to be a garbage villain. Yuk Man-chun mocks his question with a smug laugh, stepping closer while brandishing his brass knuckles as if everything is simple. Suddenly, Dowan activates his weapon mastery skill and springs back to his feet, launching a ferocious barrage of punches that catches the thug completely off guard. He leaps into the air with an overhead kick, smashing the heavyweight down into the dirt and shattering his brass knuckles upon impact. Yuk Man-chun gasps in sheer disbelief as his weapon clatters away, but he quickly erupts into manic laughter and taunts his bruised opponent while gripping his belt. Dowan responds with wide, unblinking eyes before grabbing a fistful of the thug's jacket and slamming his own leg down to trap him in a punishing grapple. Dowan lands a final heavy blow that drops Yuk Man-chun flat on the pavement, leaving both fighters gasping for air. Standing over the defeated thug in the alleyway, he watches the streetlights overhead while flashing back to a memory of Chuerin walking with her father and asking for mint chocolate chicken. Back in the present, a battered Dowan returns home, slumping heavily onto his living room sofa while staring blankly into space. He notices a family photo on the shelf and reflects on how close he came to dying in yet another brutal street fight. Tossing aside his worries, he picks up his reward and examines a set of 5 bronze keys on a ring, slipping one into a glowing keyhole to claim his system prize. Dowan sits on his living room sofa while system notifications pop up to reward him with +10 agility and +10 defense stats. He opens the shopping bag he brought home and pulls out a luxury apartment brochure titled The Royale Castle, staring at it with wide, bloodshot eyes in absolute disbelief. The system treats the real estate brochure as a dungeon map, pointing out that a nearby construction site functions as a dungeon. Frustrated by the absurd quest mechanic, he tosses the paper away in annoyance and heads off to school the next morning. Sitting on a bench outside, Dowan demands to know why Shin Chimin is suddenly refusing to cooperate, but the smug student casually brushes him off while checking his phone. Shin Chumin tells him not to act like a chess piece being pushed around and announces that he has his own plans for the day. Left sitting alone and frustrated, Ha-Dawan sighs deeply while holding a spoon during a quiet moment at school. Ha-Dawan sits down for a meal at school while a flashback reveals how Yu Ji-han suffered brutal humiliation and beatings from thugs. Stepping outside, Ha-Dawan runs into Si-yeon, who casually mentions that she came to introduce him to the Baramai district gang members. Walking together through the streets, Ha-Dawan questions why he has to tag along, but she brushes him off and leads him straight to a private dining room. He opens the door with intense anxiety and beads of sweat rolling down his face, stepping inside to find a massive long table filled with gangsters bowing deeply in unison. The room falls dead silent as the heavily tattooed thugs greet him respectfully while he stands frozen in absolute shock, wondering how his ordinary school life turned into a mafia gathering. Ha-Dawan stands frozen in the doorway of the private dining room while staring at the sparse gathering instead of a massive mob. Kan Se-hoon immediately loses his temper, shouting at the student and demanding to know what a weakling is doing here. Ha-Dawan fires back by pointing out that he already beat him up in a previous fight, causing the two to clash head-on. Si-yeon sharply shuts down their bickering with a terrifying glare, ordering both hotheads to sit down and behave. The group settles around the table, where Si-yeon explains that everyone is present because the former Baramai representative stepped down. She introduces the quirky long-haired Shin Se-hee as a first-year member while noting that Kan Se-hoon serves as the deputy representative. Kan Se-hoon glares with clenched fists, visibly bitter that he missed out on the top spot just because of Ha-Dawan's unexpected rise. Ha-Dawan sits at the dining table with the Baramai gang members as they casually review his past fights and questionable associations. He denies laughing when Ji-Bik-chan mocks him, but sparks literally fly from his fingers as tension fills the room. 4 days later, the scene shifts to a nighttime construction site where money transfers are confirmed. Ji-Bik-chan reclines on a couch with his shirt open, showing off a chest tattoo translated as unnatural greed. An elderly man arrives leaning on a cane and angrily confronts Ji-Bik-chan about delayed construction and starving workers. Ji-Bik-chan calmly dismisses the elderly man while an imposing henchman stands close by, ready to intervene. Ji-Bik-chan tells his henchman to give the elderly visitor a good massage while mocking his wealth. The henchman coldly wipes blood off his hands with a rag and heads down to the first floor where group members have gathered. Ji-Bik-chan lounges on the couch, laughing as he remarks that Ha-Dawan and Han-eun son gave them a valid reason to target the Baramai district first. Meanwhile, Ha-Dawan answers a phone call and quickly mobilizes his crew for action. The Baramai members arrive at the construction site carrying metal pipes, ready to confront the invading gang. They spot shadowy figures ahead, and a frightened construction worker raises his hands in surrender, warning that it is their turn next. Ha-Dawan receives an angry phone call from someone demanding his help, but after a moment of stunned silence, he realizes he has no choice and heads out. Arriving at the dark construction site with his crew, they step past shadowy figures and approach a group of thugs. One of the thugs casually lifts a Baramai member by the neck, taunting them with a manic grin while shouting threats at Banchan's rivals. Suddenly, a member of Ha-Dawan's crew charges forward with a metal pipe and smashes it against the thug's head, only for the weapon to shatter uselessly into pieces. The thug laughs off the attack and casually grabs the attacker by the throat, hoisting him into the air with ease. Enraged by the display, another Baramai fighter rushes in to intervene, but the opponent effortlessly dodges and slams him down onto the concrete floor. As the dust settles, a powerful dark-haired fighter steps forward and unleashes a massive electrical blast, forcing the enemy back into a defensive stance. Min Chol-vu receives a notification on his system interface while dodging around the chaotic brawl. One of the enemy thugs yells an order to press the attack, catching Min Chol-vu off guard as a glowing red baton sweeps close to his face. He quickly activates weapon mastery, dropping low to the ground and unleashing a furious flurry of strikes against his opponent's torso. The thug collapses onto the pavement in defeat, leaving Min Chol-vu standing over him with a wide-eyed, frantic expression. Another enemy lunges forward with a metal pipe, but Min Chol-vu deftly deflects the swing and counters with a brutal blow to the chest. He towers over the fallen thug with a manic grin, asking how he likes the treatment while watching Ji-Bik-chan observe the fight with mild amusement. Ji-Bik-chan turns his head casually as two more thugs rush past him to join the fray. Suddenly, one of the charging thugs swings wildly with a pipe, only for Ji-Bik-chan to effortlessly duck beneath the arc and retaliate with a swift, devastating punch. The enemy crashes hard against another attacker in a chaotic tangle of limbs and flying blood. Min Chol-vu delivers a crushing punch to an enemy thug, leaving the opponent gasping in pain while collapsing onto the pavement. Meanwhile, back at the lounge, Yukmon Chun relaxes on a couch with a glass of whiskey, complaining about ghosts before sending a subordinate to check on the situation outside. Back at the construction site, Min Chol Fud defeats 3 more thugs, earning a system notification for clearing standard monsters as he catches his breath amidst the scattered bodies. Suddenly, Kan Se-hoon grabs Min Chol-vu by the throat from behind, ignoring desperate pleas to stop as he drags the choking boy into the air. Ji Baekhyun approaches with a wide grin, holding up a combat knife and taunting that he has one more than before. Caught completely off guard, Min Chol-vu drops low to the ground and executes a sudden sliding evasion along a glowing red trajectory to slip out of the gang leader's grip. Ji Baek-chan follows up with a spinning sweep kick that connects cleanly, sending Min Chol-vu tumbling across the concrete. Min Chol-vu successfully dodges a flying knife that clatters onto the concrete while holding up a gold key in celebration. Nearby, Yukmon Chun rubs his sore neck and grumbles that he didn't ask for any help as he glares at the others. Dowan strolls down the stairs with his hands in his pockets, teasing that the heavy-set man must be scared of moving forward. Min Chol-vu pants heavily and groans that he is exhausted, prompting a deadpan look from his companion. The heavy-set gang leader then spots Ji Baek-chan arriving on the scene and immediately calls out a sarcastic greeting before deciding to leave. As the imposing man turns to walk away, a subordinate tries to stop him, but the gang leader instantly drops him with a brutal palm strike to the chest. Dowan suddenly rushes forward using a piercing skill to strike another opponent, leaving the targeted thug sprawling on the ground. He then rubs his side and announces that he is the opponent's new adversary, pointing a paint roller at the rival fighter and cheerfully suggesting they have a fair duel. Dowan suddenly spots Ji Baek-chan and mocks him for whispering behind a representative's back while hiding like a coward. Ji Baek-chan crouches on a ledge with a smug grin, taunting him right back about whether he is actually bluffing. They dash forward across the concrete floor and slam their palms together in a fierce test of strength. Meanwhile, Min Chol-vu stands near a red baton on the ground, looking utterly terrified as someone grabs his face from behind. His attacker calmly pulls back his arm and declares that he will finish him off this time. Min Chol-vu gets brutally kicked and slammed against the concrete wall, gasping for air while clutching his face in shock. He manages to grab his opponent's arm in surprise, realizing that the attacker successfully blocked his move. Leaping back into a fighting stance, Min Chol-vu declares that he is no longer the weakling he used to be. His rival calmly cracks his neck and glares down at him with an intense expression. Dowan charges forward and activates his skill to land a fierce punch on his opponent's chest. The thug immediately retaliates by grabbing and striking back, but Dowan easily catches his arm with a confident grin. He warns his enemies that today they are in for a serious beating, leaving the thug staring at him in disbelief. The opponent mutters back about people like them, prompting Dowan to question what he actually means. Suddenly, the enemy brings up a shelter named Sunny Haven, explaining that it was a non-profit organization founded on an idea created by Dowan's own father. This revelation hits Dowan like a truck, freezing him in absolute shock as memories of his father flash before his eyes. Ji Baek-chan stands at the construction site casually discussing his original plan to destroy Baramai, before questioning if the enemy smelled blood and showed up on their own. Dowan retorts that he is just following their so-called scumbag representative, prompting Ji Baek-chan to grin and acknowledge that the Baramai representative has indeed arrived. The two fighters suddenly lock hands in a tight grip and slam into the ground in a fierce grapple. Ji Baek-chan taunts Dowan about how prey wanders into a tiger's den, but Dowan smiles wildly and reminds him that he considers himself the hunter. They exchange brutal blows as Dowan slams a shockwave attack into the floor and trades heavy punches with his smiling opponent. Ji Baek-chan suddenly snaps and fires back with a vicious counterkick, smashing his boot directly into Dowan's head and sending him reeling. Dowan stumbles back and wipes his nose, complaining that his opponent only relies on cheap tricks. Ji Baek-chan just laughs it off and taunts him, claiming that the game was already over the moment Dowan left his representative behind. Dowan fires back that their representative might be a loser, but he certainly isn't weak enough to lose to Ji Baek-chan's lackey, Oksai. Suddenly, the battle intensifies as both fighters unleash a flurry of vicious blows, trading heavy punches and shockwave impacts. Dowan manages to land a sharp kick, but Ji Baek-chan endures the assault and retaliates with overwhelming force, knocking him flat on his back. As Dowan catches his breath and glares up in panic, Ji Baek-chan looms over him and coldly points out that he has grown noticeably slower. Dowan takes a brutal hit from Ji Baek-chan, stumbling back as his opponent mocks him about his late father. Ji Baek-chan keeps up the psychological pressure, telling him that his father must have died feeling unfulfilled while trying to guide delinquents. Driven to a boiling point of fury, Dowan's eyes suddenly flash with a glowing blue light as he seizes his opponent's jacket. He punches back with supernatural force, but Jubek-chan easily shakes it off and immediately counters with a devastating right hook that drops Dowan hard onto the cold ground. As Dowan lies flat on his back, a sudden flashback shifts the scene to a cozy living room where a young Dowan plays a pixelated arcade game on a console with his smiling father. Snapping back to the present reality inside the construction site, Dowan grabs Jubek-chan's jacket and snaps that nobody should involve parents in this fight. He unleashes an exclusive class skill that flips Jubek-chan hard onto the concrete floor with a powerful crash. Jubek-chan stumbles back up with a cold glare and demands to know if Dowan is finished talking yet. Rushing forward with a manic grin, Jubek-chan suddenly charges while Dowan mutters to himself about what to do next. Remembering that this is no time to worry about others, Dowan pivots and delivers a sudden, bone-shattering right hook straight to Jubek-chan's jaw. Jubek-chan sneers that he honestly doesn't care whether some loser lives or dies, before slamming Dowan down onto the concrete floor with a vicious suplex. Pinning Dowan beneath him, Jubek-chan grins wildly and starts raining down brutal punches while laughing about how insanely strong he feels. Out of nowhere, another thug steps in and casually kicks Dowan away, telling him to stop wasting energy when he clearly has no strength left. Struggling back up onto his hands and knees, a battered Dowan grits his teeth through the pain and insists that he can still keep going. He stumbles forward to throw a punch, but the dark-haired thug easily absorbs the blow to his chest and dismisses Dowan's efforts as completely useless. Drawing chilling parallels to his father, Jubek-chan and his enforcer mock Dowan's futile struggle before landing another devastating combination of strikes that leaves him gasping for air on the pavement. Gasping heavily for air after taking another brutal beating, Dowan flashes back to a cherished memory of playing video games with his father. Remembering how his dad encouraged him to keep fighting even when a level felt impossible, Dowan suddenly picks himself back up off the concrete. Jubek-chan watches with a cold sneer, smugly telling the battered student that no amount of persistence can overcome human limitations. Ignoring the taunt, Dowan steps forward and insists that he learned from the game that no enemy is truly unbeatable. With a sudden burst of desperation, Dowan lunges forward and slams his palm directly into Jubek-chan's face, triggering a massive system notification for critical damage that sends shockwaves through the area. Jubek-chan crashes heavily to the ground, spitting blood in absolute shock as his overconfidence instantly shatters. Dowan screams in pure adrenaline as he lands a devastating combo on Jubek-chan, sending shockwaves through the area. All free of reg. Flashing back to his childhood, he remembers playing video games with his father, who praised his determination and told him that every effort leaves an impact. Back in the present, Dowan gasps for air while sitting on the concrete beside the defeated Jubek-chan, who is labeled by the system as an elite monster. As both fighters lie exhausted and unable to move, heavy footsteps echo through the construction site. A construction worker steps into view and remarks that Dowan walked right into the trap himself. The scene shifts to a new powerhouse named Chon Sok-yun, who appears on the scene with a smug and dangerous confidence. He wastes no time asserting his dominance, brutally pinning someone to the ground and unleashing a flurry of physical attacks. As he mocks the situation, his raw strength proves overwhelming, and he doesn't seem the least bit concerned about his own safety while he gloats. Meanwhile, a battered and exhausted student, clearly drained from the previous chaos, watches the confrontation unfold from the shadows of the construction site. It's a total mess, and you really have to wonder if these guys ever get tired of the non-stop fighting. It's there as expectorations between. The tension hits a breaking point when the newcomer dismisses the previous combatants as weak and prepares to finish his business. Dowan tries to protect a defeated Min Kol-woo while calling out Jubek-chan, only to suddenly leap forward and punch the menacing boss right in the face. Jubek-chan stumbles back with a shocked expression, but before anyone can celebrate, an 18-year-old newcomer named Chon Sok-yun calmly steps onto the scene as the Bonchon representative. A terrified Jubek-chan immediately sweats and stammers out apologies, realizing his supposed authority means nothing in front of this new arrival. Chon Sok-yun narrows his glowing eyes and sharply questions Jubek-chan about unauthorized invasions and missing construction funds, leaving everyone frozen in absolute terror. Classic boss hierarchy in action, because there is always a bigger fish waiting to ruin your day. Chon Sok-yun slams his foot down on the concrete with crushing force, warning them all that they have made a grave mistake. Dowan watches in stunned disbelief as Yukman Chun takes a brutal hit and collapses unconscious onto the concrete floor. He stands frozen in shock, sweating profusely while trying to process the sudden turn of events during the brawl. Another character casually approaches Dowan and bluntly asks if he wants to finish what was started with Baramai, flashing an unsettling smile under the dim construction site lights. A silver-haired gang member suddenly steps into view and tells everyone to stop, complaining that this is a waste of time and admitting he has other plans for the day. He drops a brochure for a luxury apartment complex onto a bench and casually dismisses the ongoing conflict as a minor nuisance. Dowan stares in bewilderment as the silver-haired fighter warns him not to mess with his crew again before walking away into the shadows. The silver-haired leader then pauses to bid farewell to his associates, leaving a wide-eyed and terrified Dowan staring after him with utter shock. Dowan stands staring in shock at the unconscious body of Yuk Man Chun, lying defeated on the concrete. Divered brace, which was while, new to same day. Min Chol Vu supports a heavily battered Dowan as they limp away from the confrontation. Kan Se-hoon glares at Dowan, questioning if he really thinks walking away from the representative position is that simple. Dowan panics, shouting that they only came here to beat up the Banshan guys and never intended to get dragged into this mess. Kan Se-hoon flashes a bloody, confident grin and warns him not to die because he plans to take the representative title next time. Dowan watches in bewildered frustration as Kan Se-hoon casually strolls away into the dark, humming to himself. Dowan opens his system notification to claim a massive clearance reward and happily receives 12 bronze keys. He travels to the hospital morgue in a black suit, greeting his late father as he steps inside. A doctor pulls back a sheet on a gurney to reveal a severely battered body covered in blood and trauma. Dowan stares in absolute horror at the medical report explaining that his father swerved into an electrical pole to avoid a pedestrian. He approaches the columbarium niche, holding his father's framed photo, and bursts into tears. Standing before the memorial shelf, he notices something strange about the flowers left in front of the picture. Dowan stands frozen in shock at the columbarium as a mysterious man in a black suit appears right beside his father's memorial niche. He demands to know why the stranger is there and how he even knows his late father. The narrative abruptly cuts back to a flashback of a young Dowan sitting alone on a playground swing while sipping a canned drink. A tracksuit-wearing man approaches him with a carton of strawberry milk and strikes up a conversation about avoiding unhealthy habits. Dowan immediately grows suspicious and questions the stranger's motives, only to discover the man is just a local bully hunter. Back in the present at the columbarium, the silver-haired man drops a chilling bombshell that completely turns Dowan's world upside down. He suggests that what happened to Dowan's father might not have been a tragic accident at all, but rather a carefully planned murder carried out by someone close to him. Dowan stares in disbelief as the silver-haired man calmly questions whether his father's death was really just an accident. He demands to know if the stranger is playing a sick joke, but the man insists he has uncollected evidence that proves otherwise. The scene shifts to an earlier meeting where a young man named Chon Sok-yeon meets with the same silver-haired informant in an office. Chon Sok-yeon slams his whiskey glass down and pulls out his phone to reveal surveillance footage from the day of the raid. The stranger watches the video in shock as Chon Sok-yeon points out that Dowan's father was closely tied to the events. Back at the columbarium, the man leaves Dowan to decide whether or not to believe the shocking revelation about the murder. Dowan stands alone in the memorial hall, staring at a framed family photo and remembering happier times with his late father. Water train day, another prast. Dowan stands alone in the rainy room, gripping a towel as he processes the shattering revelation that uncollected evidence from 3 years ago proves his father's death was actually murder. He mutters in disbelief, staring blankly into the pouring night while miles away in a high-rise apartment. A silver-haired man gazes out at the stormy skyline. That silver-haired man's phone buzzes on the glass table, flashing incoming messages from Dowan. Looking unsettled, the man steps outside into the rain under a large black umbrella, sheltered by a towering heavy-set bodyguard who shields him from the storm. As they walk down the dark street, the silver-haired man suddenly freezes in total shock upon spotting someone waiting ahead. He stares wide-eyed through the gloom as Dowan appears right before them, standing drenched and furious on the pavement. Dowan confronts the silver-haired informant on the rainy street, demanding to know why he is there and mentioning the evidence. The silver-haired man casually dismisses him, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a USB drive while warning that pursuing this will only cause trouble. He tells Dowan to back off, but Dowan refuses and immediately lunges forward with a burst of glowing blue energy. The heavy-set bodyguard steps in and throws a heavy punch, sending Dowan crashing down onto the wet pavement. Undeterred, Dowan activates his piercing skill and unleashes a furious flurry of empowered strikes against the massive opponent. He lands blow after blow with crackling blue lightning until the heavy-set man crashes to the ground, leaving him staring up in disbelief as Dowan towers over him. Dowan stands over the downed bodyguard, catching his breath while the silver-haired opponent approaches with a smug warning about meddling with his crew. The silver-haired man tells Dowan that he made a mistake, prompting an immediate flying kick from the opponent that knocks Dowan backward. Dowan retaliates with a soaring aerial strike, but the silver-haired fighter easily ducks and counterattacks with a sweeping kick that sends Dowan crashing to the ground. Annoyed by the predictable moves, the silver-haired opponent dodges another flying kick and mocks Dowan for thinking the same trick would work twice. Dowan lands a heavy empowered strike with blue lightning flashing around him, but the silver-haired fighter simply blocks it with his forearm and brushes it off. Realizing a single blow won't cut it against this guy, Dowan charges forward once more with crackling energy to launch a fresh assault. Dowan lands a stunning critical strike that sends his silver-haired opponent crashing down onto the pavement with a massive shockwave. He stares in disbelief at his own glowing hands while gasping for air and trying to process just how much damage he managed to deal. The silver-haired fighter picks himself up off the ground with a slightly surprised expression, admitting that his opponent's movements are completely unrealistic. He sneers that he expected a much better fight, wins back a vicious punch, and delivers a devastating blow straight to Dowan's face. The impact sends a violent spray of blood flying into the air as Dowan collapses backward onto his knees in agonizing defeat. Staring down at the battered protagonist, the silver-haired man mutters that he thought there would be more to him before turning away, leaving Dowan gasping for breath on the wet street. Dowan quickly drops down to trip the silver-haired opponent off balance right onto the pavement. He climbs on top and immediately unleashes a furious combo of brutal punches with glowing glue energy flashing around his fists. The silver-haired fighter lies flat on his back, asking if he is finished and pointing out that his attacker's knuckles are completely ruined. Panting heavily and covered in sweat and blood, Dowan glares down and says he expected more from someone like him. He sits astride the defeated opponent, staring blankly down at his bloodied hands while the silver-haired man drops a small object from his limp palm. Dowan stares down with wide, bloodshot eyes as the defeated opponent casually asks if he really thought he was being serious. Bach, the silver-haired fighter, taunts him about landing a second hit while flashing a smug grin and holding up a small green vape device. Sitting slumped against a brick wall in the pouring rain, Dowan gasps for air while panic washes over his face. He remembers that the crime scene footage from 3 years ago, shown by Chon Sok-yoon, matches the exact location of their current confrontation. The silver-haired opponent casually stands up, twirling the small device in his hand and telling him to come visit if he wants it back. Left alone in the pouring rain with bloody hands, Dowan suddenly receives a mysterious quest notification that activates right before his eyes. Staring intently into the downpour with glowing blue eyes, he stands back up and accepts the challenge because he feels incomparably stronger than before. A flashback then reveals the background of Sunny Haven, a non-profit organization created to guide troubled youths under the leadership of his father. Sitting at his computer, wearing a choo-choo shirt, a younger Dowan watches as his father packs a bag to leave for work. When the young student confronts his father about a delinquent from Sunny Haven who constantly smokes at school and beats people up, his father just smiles and brushes it off. Typical parental optimism at its finest, right? Things quickly escalate as the older man casually dismisses the juvenile delinquency and blames his father's ongoing incompetence instead, driving the young student to snap and yell at him in frustration. A young Dowan angrily questions his father about whether Sunny Haven is just a front to profit from donations, demanding to know if he actually believes troubled youths can change. His father simply smiles and says he is heading out, leaving the frustrated teenager to stew in his bitter resentment. Flashing back to reality, Dowan suddenly wakes up on his bed in a cold sweat, clutching his head as memories of the fatal car crash involving his father rush back. Holding a digital thermometer in his mouth while wrapped in a blanket, he sits on the sofa and worries over how strong the silver-haired opponent was during their street brawl. He mutters about someone from his inner circle possibly being involved in the conspiracy, wondering how that flash drive got into the wrong hands and whether the silver-haired fighter is tied to the plot. Because the opponent refused to hand over the evidence unless Dowan defeats him in a competition, the furious protagonist grabs his head in disbelief and groans loudly in frustration. Right on cue, a system quest window pops up before his eyes, and with his determination fully ignited, he declares that he is ready for whatever mission comes his way. Stepping outside in his school uniform, Dowan immediately receives his bizarre new objective: traverse the remaining 49,869 meters to school entirely in a bridge walk pose. Passers-by stare in absolute shock and point fingers at him, while nearby female students laugh uncontrollably and quickly walk away from the utterly unhinged spectacle. Dowan continues his agonizing journey by awkwardly crawling along the pavement in a bridge pose as terrified students scream and take photos of him. Woody E. Den. After collapsing from sheer exhaustion inside a classroom, he checks his system interface, which assigns him even more bizarre quests like catching pigeons barehanded and hanging under a playground slide. He gasps for air back on his living room floor while completing a grueling workout routine, apologizing to his late father as his stamina completely bottoms out. Sitting alone by the playground equipment later that evening, he mutters to himself about whether Chon Sok-yeon's evidence could be fake and wonders if Han In-son simply made a mistake. Suddenly, a familiar voice interrupts his train of thought, and he looks up to find a shirtless, heavily tattooed Kan Se-hoon casually doing pull-ups on the nearby bars. Kan Se-hoon mocks him for clinging to the playground slide like a total weirdo, prompting a flustered Dowan to stammer excuses about doing a special kind of workout. He asks why his acquaintance is training outside instead of hitting a proper gym, leading to a surprising conversation about their shared past. Kan Se-hoon explains that, back in middle school, he was overweight and too ashamed of his heavy body to work out in a public gym, so he spent 2 agonizing years training at this very playground every single night in total solitude. Dowan flashes back to his childhood when he was relentlessly bullied at school and begged his mother to let him learn martial arts, only to quit every single discipline because he always gave up when things got too hard. He stares blankly at the playground equipment while reviewing his absurd system quests and recalling a past conversation with Kan Se-hoon about sticking to habits. Classic quitting mindset, right? But let's see if he actually follows through this time. The scene abruptly jumps 2 months later as an unknown man sits inside a quiet office, looking up with a questioning expression as the door swings open. Dowan finds himself caught up in another grueling round of absurd system quests, desperately trying to catch pigeons with his bare hands and holding exhausting wall sits in the middle of a classroom. He sweats through relentless home fitness gaming sessions and forces himself through painful physical stretches until he finally hears the sweet notification chime of completing a major milestone. His stats suddenly skyrocket across the board with massive boosts to his strength, defense, agility, and spirit, leaving him staring wide-eyed at his floating status window in pure disbelief. Naturally, because every system needs to squeeze its user for maximum suffering, he immediately checks his next bizarre assignment while standing at a local playground. He then strides forward with a renewed sense of purpose, stepping directly into an office room where an unknown individual turns around to address him. Dowan strides into the office room to confront the individuals waiting for him, demanding to know where they got their evidence. One of the men scoffs at his defiance and suddenly lunges forward, launching a ferocious flying kick straight at his face. Dowan manages to block the onslaught and grabs his attacker's hand, but the seasoned fighter quickly turns the tables and pins him down by the wrists. Meanwhile, in a separate lounge area, Han In-son sits casually on a leather couch alongside another associate, sipping a drink while scrolling on a phone. They discuss the video evidence regarding the culprit behind the fatal incident, casually debating whether they should hand the sensitive information over to Dowan. Dowan fires back in disbelief, demanding to know why he is being dragged into this mess when he has nothing to do with the man's dead father. Nas, Palder, one of the associates, casually suggests that if Dowan cares so much, someone should just go tell him about the culprit, but the gray-haired man refuses, noting that without seeing it for himself, Dowan will never believe the truth and will only end up searching even more desperately for the video. The man then places his phone down on the table with a firm click, cutting off the conversation as the scene shifts back to the intense brawl. Dowan manages to deflect an incoming punch just in time, watching in shock as a system notification pops up to show his defense stats skyrocketing from 21 to 21. His opponent immediately follows up with a blistering high-speed roundhouse kick that slams into the wall with explosive force, splintering the wood and sending debris flying everywhere. Typical shonen power-up logic right when things get desperate. What could possibly go wrong? Dowan narrows his eyes and assumes a tense, low fighting stance as his agility stat suddenly spikes from 31 to 241, right before his opponent launches another furious assault. Dowan stands his ground in the office while the gray-haired man casually swirls a glass of whiskey and questions whether a weak fighter could possibly handle him. Han In-son watches the exchange closely from the couch, noting that their opponent is unusually special, while the gray-haired man brushes off any notion of a fair match. Tensions flare as the gray-haired man abruptly rises to his feet, tossing off his jacket to reveal a heavily toned physique underneath. Dowan flashes back to past sparring sessions where his opponent's moves felt completely unrealistic, realizing right then that the fighting style mirrors his own. Suddenly, The gray-haired man lunges forward with a crazed grin and throws a punch while taunting Shah Dowan about whether he should be grateful to his dead father. Dowan instantly counters with a devastating punch that violently rocks his attacker's head back and sends him crashing to the floor. Standing over the downed opponent, Shah Dowan follows up with a heavy downward strike, slamming the man completely into the ground. Dowan stands over his downed opponent with wide, stunned eyes while the gray-haired man lets out a breathless laugh from the floor, admitting that this fight far exceeds his expectations. Meanwhile, somewhere outside the building, Ji-beok Chan stands on a walkway and receives a panicked phone call reporting repeated security alerts from the Bonchon office. Back in the intense office brawl, the gray-haired attacker suddenly leaps back up with a manic grin and fires off a punch at Dowan's head. Ducking just in time, Dowan watches in shock as his opponent vaults upward and uses the couch to leap into a handstand position. Springing off the cushions with brutal momentum, the gray-haired man lands a vicious aerial kick that sends Dowan crashing backward across the room. Stumbling to his feet and muttering a curse in frustration, Dowan glares at his relentless attacker as the man lunges forward yet again with a wide grin. The gray-haired attacker dodges another assault before asking if Dowan used to be this nagging, musing aloud how much he loves the thought of fighting for real. Spotting his chance, Dowan lunges forward and lands a solid punch right to his opponent's face, but the gray-haired man simply laughs off the blow. With a sudden burst of speed, the attacker vaults off the furniture and delivers a brutal spinning kick that knocks Dowan staggering back against the wall. Spitting out blood with a fierce glare, Dowan blocks an incoming strike and demands to know what his opponent is up to. The gray-haired man smirks and casually brushes past him to grab the flash drive, prompting Dowan to snap that he will just take it back by force. A sudden system notification flashes on screen showing Dowan's spirit stat skyrocketing from 1 to 2000 ein as he charges back into the fray with blazing speed. Dowan unleashes a furious flurry of punches, claiming he knew his opponent was hiding his true strength all along. The gray-haired attacker simply smiles and remarks that dragging this out is a waste of time, before landing a vicious counterblow. After checking his hand and realizing a critical strike just triggered, Dowan notices his defeated foe is completely knocked out under a pile of debris. He calmly grabs the flash drive and walks away from the wrecked office, heading out into the quiet night streets. Meanwhile, Han In-son arrives at the location with his gang and complains about the long walk while feeling a familiar sense of unease. He orders one of his subordinates to check out the building, and the henchman nervously spots someone sitting on the stairs. Shun In-son walks up to investigate and is stunned to find Ji-beok Chan waiting right in his path. Ji-beok Chan sits calmly on the staircase and tells Han In-son that he is not letting anyone go upstairs. Smirking in his green jacket, Ji-beok Chan asks what is going on and notices the commotion happening inside the building. Han In-son looks annoyed and mentions that just in case something happened, he brought the entire Bonchon force with him into the street. Ji-beok Chan stands up with his shirt open, revealing chest tattoos, and asks what Han In-son is doing there, but gets told off with a curse word. Stepping close, Ji-beok Chan gives him an ultimatum to either leave or attack right now, threatening everyone present. A flashback shows Dowan talking on the phone in a bathrobe inside the Bonchon office while on a call. Returning to the present, Ji-beok Chan faces the massive crowd of Bonchon members gathered tightly on the dark street. Ji-beok Chan stands in the dark street muttering that he hates wasting time while glaring ahead with beads of sweat on his face. He turns around to face someone standing right behind him as a tense blue light washes over the scene. Ji-beok Chan steps outside wearing his green jacket open over a bare chest. Looking around in sudden confusion at the unfolding situation, he mutters an expletive under his breath while clenching his teeth and sweating from the pressure. Nearby, Dowan stands under a glowing blue light with wide eyes and a stunned expression. Ji-beok Chan turns back around with a puzzled expression as someone approaches from the steps behind him.
Dubiato!
Suddenly, Dowan appears walking up the steps, wondering aloud why Han In-son is there and asking if that guy is a dungeon boss. Haha. Dowan stands on the steps with a bruised and battered face, looking completely bewildered by what he sees. A high-angle aerial shot reveals a massive crowd of gang members packed tightly into the dark street below. Ji-beok Chan marches past another man with his hands in his pockets, angrily demanding to know what Dowan was doing inside. Two figures stand back-to-back in a dramatic flashback shot with serious looks on their faces. Ji-beok Chan angrily clenches his fist so hard it makes a cracking sound while letting out a rough grunt. Han In-son walks calmly down the street past the crowd with his hands in his pockets alongside Dowan. Suddenly, heavy wooden doors swing swing open with a loud crash as Jibek Chan and his men forcefully burst into the room. Inside the office, Dowan's beaten body sways unsteadily as he stands hunched over among scattered debris and broken furniture. Jibek Chan and his enforcers rush through the doorway, looking around in absolute shock at the demolished office. Looking completely unbothered, Dowan stands amid the wreckage, telling them not to overreact because it is just a bit noisy. Jibek Chan stands staring awkwardly with sweat running down his face as someone tells him to clean up the mess since he is already there. Dowan suddenly turns around with a blood-stained face and a wide, deranged grin stretching across his lips. Dowan sits on a park bench next to a gray-haired man holding his phone while asking if he knows the person responsible for the fatal car accident. He plugs a flash drive into his phone and replays a short CAD video showing a black car parked suspiciously near a brick wall at 1856 on the dot. Dowan's eyes widen in sudden shock as he stares at the screen, noticing a distinct rainbow-colored shelter logo on the attacker's jacket from the footage. He flashes back to a conversation at the columbarium where he was told the killer belonged to his inner circle, making his blood run cold. The gray-haired man holds up a black hoodie bearing the same shelter logo, explaining that these garments create a strange sense of connection and positive influence among troubled youths at Sunny Haven. He casually shrugs and flashes a friendly smile while holding up the branded jacket, arguing that despite the harsh design, the clothing actually helps form bonds among kids who lack a physical sanctuary. Dowan sits slumped on the park bench next to Han In-son, staring down at his phone with a heavy heart while trying to figure out who was behind his father's fatal car accident. Han In-son rationalizes that going to the police with anonymous video footage and a closed case won't achieve anything useful, prompting Dowan to clench his fist in mounting frustration. He recalls old photographs showing suspicious individuals connected to Sunny Haven, realizing that the abandoned orphanage building might still hold vital clues. Thanking Han In-son for helping him clear his mind, Dowan suddenly glares forward with absolute resolve and vows to destroy everyone responsible for the tragedy. The next day at school, he sits at his desk and breaks into a cold sweat when an announcement reveals that upcoming midterm exams will feature extremely difficult questions. Dowan panics over his upcoming exams and groans in despair, but a friendly classmate offers to help him study at his house after school. Walking outside the school gates shortly after, Dowan receives a sudden system notification on a glowing blue screen that triggers a strange quest. He stares in shock at the system interface while glancing across the street where two shady thugs stand smoking and complaining about the lack of attractive women in the Gwanak district. Suddenly, an aggressive man bumps into a passing female office worker and brushes off her angry shove with a crude remark. Dowan narrows his eyes and gasps upon recognizing a familiar face standing nearby among the rough crowd. Turning back to his classmate with a knowing smile, Dowan mentions that he just spotted an old best friend from the past standing right across the alley.